Okay, so this week's shir, B'chlolos, I think, a hakdama, an overview that covers B'chlolos, everything. This segment is basically Amir al-Nochri, Amir al-Akum. And I think we should go into the Yisod, the overview and the Klolim to a certain degree, maybe at least for the first half, and see what Amir al-Akum is really all about, with the Mekoides a little bit. Nothing overly complex, but a little deep. And then we'll take it from there. How does that grab you?
Very well.
So the Mishnah, there's a Mishnah in Shabbos. Actually, the Mishnah is in Kuf Chof Aleph Omid Aleph. The Mishnah in Shabbos says that if a goy comes on his own and he wants to extinguish a fire, there's a Rahman al-Tzlan, a fire in a Jewish home, and he wants to extinguish it. So the Mishnah says, you don't tell him, do extinguish or don't extinguish. You don't tell him to extinguish or not to extinguish. Now we hear Rashi basically explains that telling a goy to do a malacha because of you, on your behalf, is basically called a shvus. So it's also Amir al-Nochri is mishum shvus, also mishum shvus, that Rabbanon made that gezerah. The Mishnah also continues to say that you don't have to stop him from extinguishing the fire, and that's a different prat that we're not necessarily going to get into at this point. Tosfos over here in Dibur HaMaschil Ein Oimrim Lo Kabe, he goes a step further, and he says that from the Gemara you learn that asking a goy to do even an isur d'Rabbanon known as shvus, dishvus, is also ironically is also an isur. That's what Tosfos says. Not everyone agrees, but I mean, yes, everyone agrees. But when it comes to mokim mitzvah, we'll see shvus to shvus, but mokim mitzvah, then there's a difference. But Tosfos says that even a shvus, dishvus, telling a goy to do a malacha, which is a shvus, isur d'Rabbanon, and the malacha itself, the nature of the malacha is Eid Rabbanon, known as Shvus to Shvus, is also to do on Shabbos, and we'll see why. Then there's a Mechilta. The Mechilta learns from where it talks about Shabbos and Kol Malacha Lo Ye Oseh. Malacha Lo Ye Oseh, which means Ye Oseh in Yiddish means Zol Nish Giton Veren. It should not be done. It should not be performed, which means, according to the Mechilta, the pshat over here is, it may not be performed either by you, and a goy also may not perform it. In other words, Amir al-Nochri is also even minatoira, says the Mechilta, which doesn't agree with what the Mishnah just said. The Mishnah says it's also midrabanan. But Lamaisa, the Ramban explains on this Mechilta that it's really not also it's really only also midrabanan. The Mechilta basically says what he says. Kol malacha lo yoseh says that Ramban is only in a smachta. Really, it's only midrabanan.
Yes.
Okay, so now what is the reason? Why is there an isur for Amir al-Nochri? And basically, there are two reasons given by the Rishonim why Amir al-Nochri is osur, is a shvus. And the first one is Rashi. This Rashi is in Gemara Avodah Zarah, actually, and the Rashi says that it's based on the pasuk in Yeshaya. We say it before Kiddush, Kiddush Rabbah, during the day Kiddush. In other words, you're not supposed to talk about a malacha on Shabbos. In other words, and that would be koilel, that would include telling a goy to do a malacha for you as well. That's mimtzei chefzecha v'daber dover, uttering, speaking about doing a malacha, commanding someone to do a malacha for you is also. That's the Amir al-Nochri isur. Then there's another Rashi, interestingly, brought down in Gemara Shabbos, Kuflan Gimel. Over there, the Gemara, the Rashi writes that the Isur is because the Goy becomes your Shliach. The Goy becomes Poshet your Shliach. Here's the Lashon of Rashi. Right? Rashi says, yeah, you're not supposed to give a Goy money on Erev Shabbos that he should go purchase for you during Shabbos in the marketplace. Ki yesh shlichus lenochri lechumra. This is Agoy's Maminis. Rashi says, Va'arehu shluchoi. So Rashi says, because the Goy is the shliach of the Yid. The Agoy's Maminis explains, Va'arehu shluchoi, that even though generally speaking, a Goy cannot be a Yid's shliach, right? Atem ma'atem b'nei bris avshluchem b'nei bris, right? In general,
by trumas.
Yeah, by trumas, right? Kein torimu gam atem ma'atem b'nei bris avshluchem b'nei bris. But however, lechumra, it does. When it comes to Shabbos, lechumra we're machmir. Incidentally, the Alter Rebbe, and you learned it over here also in Shin Mem Gimel, Seif Hey, if you want to turn to the booklet where you have the Alter Rebbe, Shin Mem Gimel Seif Hey, the Alter Rebbe writes that this actually applies to all Isurim. Here, let me read it. Let me read it inside Shin Mem Gimel Seif Hey. Where is it? Shamira lenochri asura bechol o yisurim shebatoira. B'kol shekein she'also lo yimad ken la'atinik. So Amira lenochri applies to all isurim in the Torah. According to and the Alter Rebbe brings it down, Paskins, that the Chumre, it applies to all of the isurim. So, including Shabbos over here. When it comes to Shabbos, when you tell a goy to do a malacha,
but usually it's just Yisurim Midiraisa, right? Besides for Shabbos.
Yeah, the Chol Yisurim, all Yisurim. Yeah, all Yisurim B'Torah.
But including Midrabanan, or that's only Shabbos. In other words, Yisurim in Torah, but only on Shabbos.
So Taisvis says, Taisvis is mechadish that even Shvus to Shvus, when it comes to Shabbos, it could be even a malachim d'Rabbanan. But the Alter Rebbe says all the Yisurim of the Torah, you know, if you tell the guy to do it for you, okay, he becomes your shliach. So over here, it's mitzat shlichus, mitam shlichus over here. That's the problem. Then you have a Rambam in Hilchah Shabbos. He says that Amir Lenochri is also because the Chachomim, and this is also brought down in Shulchan Aruch, because the Chachomim didn't want Shabbos to be, you know, it's Amir Lenochri kal b'nei abrius. You know, he didn't want Shabbos to be treated very lightly. And the problem is, if a goy could do a malacha for a yid, we may ultimately do it ourselves. And the Rambam says that, you know, basically, Shaloi Yehi Shabbos Kal Beinei Abrius, and if you end up telling a goy to do the malacha, you may end up doing the malacha yourself, and that's why there is basically a problem. Okay? That's why you have the problem of Amir Lenochri. So, V'daber Dover and Shlichus. The question is, would there be a nafkamina between V'daber Dover, if you say the reason is V'daber Dover, the Amira is Osir, or is it Metam Shlichus? You're not doing it, but the goy doing it for you makes it considered as if you're doing it. What would be the nafkamina? There's an interesting Avnei Nezer.
Before Shabbos, on Shabbos, after Shabbos, yeah?
Yeah, there's an interesting Avnei Nezer. On the Avnei Nezer explains that if you were to do it, let's say you're telling the goy on Shabbos to do a malacha for after Shabbos, like you said, then you're over on V'daber Dover, but the shlichus is not a problem. If he's doing a malacha for you on Motzei Shabbos, what's the problem? versus fakert, if you tell a goy before Shabbos, or on Shabbos to do a malacha, if you tell him before Shabbos to do a malacha, and he ends up doing it to you on Shabbos, so matam b'daber davar is no issue. Matam shlichus, there is an issue because he ended up doing it for you 12 o'clock noon on Shabbos, and it's considered as if you did it. That's basically the chiluk that Afkemina that the Avnei Nezer brings.
And then on Shabbos is both, because it's also
Zicher.
Yeah.
Zicher, yeah, of course. The chiddush is even when one applies, the other one doesn't apply. If you tell him on Shabbos and he doesn't malach on Shabbos, then zicher, then of course. But lamaisa la'alach we pass like both of them, the chumrah, and so practically speaking, being that we hold like both of them, you're not allowed to ask a goy on Shabbos to do any malacha for you, and you're not allowed to ask a goy on Shabbos to do a malacha after Shabbos, before Shabbos to do a malacha on Shabbos, and there's no, okay, fine. So that's the svara why Amir al-Nochri would be also with some Mekoides. The question is, what happens post factum? Post factum. What happens if a goy did a malacha for you? Are you allowed to have a no from that malacha? Right? Which is also something that you covered in these simonim in Shulchan Aruch. So there's a Mishnah. That says the following.
You're talking now post facto when you told him, or you're talking about when he went and did it by himself without you telling him?
So we'll see. So So in Reisha and Vav, it primarily talks about not Shin Zayin. In Reisha and Vav, it talks about if a goy did a malacha for a yid on his own. Did he do it for a yid? Did he not do it for a yid? So the Mishnah says, there's a Mishnah in Shabbos Kuf Vav Aleph that says, Nochri shehid likis aner mishtamish loire Yisrael. If a goy lit a candle, a yid could benefit. But ve'im bishvil Yisrael, if however he specifically lit it for the sake of the yid, osur, he's not supposed to. That's what the Mishnah says. Which means even the chiddush of the Mishnah is, in a way, even if the yid said nothing to the goy, there was no amir l'nochri, the goy did a malacha for the sake of the yid, you're still not supposed to benefit from it. Why? Why is that? So there's an interesting Rashba. The Rashba says, because if you allow him to benefit from the malacha done by the goy, you may come to ask him lechatchila to do it. In other words, if he did it b'diavad and you're cashing in on what he did b'diavad, you'll make a lechatchila into a b'diavad. The next time you'll ask him lechatchila. But here the Rashba asks a very interesting question. The Rashba asks that on himself, l'chura it's a gzeira l'gzeira. What he's saying over here, if you come to benefit b'diavad, it may be a lechatchila. What do you mean? The whole isra of benefiting from a malacha, from a goy, the whole amir l'nochri is midrabanan, is a shvus. So over here, you're making a gzeira l'gzeira. You don't make a gzeira l'gzeira. The whole amir l'nochri is a gzeira. And like we said before, the Mechilta saying kol malacha lo yiyose is only an asmachta. It's really not midaraisa, like the Ramban points out. So this is a gzeira l'gzeira. It's only midrabanan. So what's going on over here? So he says that Rashba, kula choda gzeirahi. It's all part of the same gzeira. It's not a gzeira l'gzeira. It's all one. It's all part of it. All was l'chatchila in the box of amir l'nochri. So it's not considered a gzeira l'gzeira. There's an interesting Alter Rebbe in Reish Ayin Vav, the Seif Aleph. The Alter Rebbe paskins like the Mishnah that if a goy lights a candle for a particular yid, No other Yid is allowed to benefit from it because a goy, right? Because Pedro lit it for Reuven. And once he lit it for Reuven, Shimon, Levi, Yehuda, Yisachar, Zevulun, no one could benefit from it. Even though Yisachar has no clue who Pedro is. And which means Pedro clearly did not light it for Yisachar, still in all. And the Alter Rebbe explains why you may not do it based on what the Rashba says. Because you'll come to lechatchila as the goy, and that's what we want to prevent by not benefiting from the goy's malacha being done for a yid. In another siman, the Alter Rebbe also says that no one is allowed to b'chlal have any hano from any malacha being done by a goy who did it for the sake of a yid, being done for the sake of another yid. However, he stipulates, he says, like by a isur da'iraisa, only if it's a malacha da'iraisa. If the goy did a malacha which is only an isur midrabanan, then only Reuven, if he did it for Reuven, only Reuven cannot benefit from it, but Shimon, Levi, and Yehuda, and whoever else can. Being that it's a malacha midrabanan, so here we're more mekel. Now back to Reish Ayin Vav, Sif Vav and Zayin. Here the Alter Rebbe clearly teaches that a yid could benefit from a malacha that the goy did for himself. If a goy does a malacha for himself or for other goyim, as long as he didn't do it for a yid could benefit from it. However, if the goy did a malacha both for a yid and himself, for himself and a yid, or a goy and a yid, here it's also to benefit from it. And therefore, if a goy, let's say, practically speaking, if a goy turns on a light, he turns on a light in the room. So the question is, who's in the room? And you would go after the roiv. If the room has a roiv goyim over there, then the yid's a lot of benefit from it because minastam, he lit it for the roiv. Unless it's very obvious, let's say the inside that room is his boss, is his friend, a yid. Then it's obvious that he lit it for the yid, and it's a problem. Which means he also did it for yidden, and then it becomes a problem.
The other way around also, yeah?
What do you mean?
Let's say President Biden's in the room and it's mostly Jews in the room. We can assume he did it for President Biden, not for the Rav Yidden.
Okay, so yeah, if you clearly know, if you know that, President Biden needed light. He needed a little light in his darkness. So then you know what happened. Otherwise, if it was President Biden and his Jewish advisors, then you have an issue. Because President Biden, without his Jewish advisors, cannot see anything. Weiter.
Apparently, even with his Jewish advisors, he can't see anything. So
I'm not saying it's a mila.
You can rely on it.
I didn't say it was a mila. I'm just telling you the fact. Maybe even the chsaron. Al kaponim. So, actually, the Alter Rebbe goes a step further. The Alter Rebbe says that if there are situations where a goy does a malacha for himself, and Yidden are there, they still cannot benefit from it. Let's say if the goy knows that the Yid needs a certain malacha, that the type of malacha he's performing is a type of malacha where he may do extra. He may do extra in doing this type of malacha. He may do extra now that he has the yid there for his friend.
What? Like let's say there's a yid there who's a hotel owner and he's a maintenance man and he wants to show he's a good maintenance man. Maybe he can get a job with him at some point later, something on that.
Or whatever it is. Yeah. Of course, he lo yav limatanta if he doesn't give mana. Of course, But the question is, but what type of malacha we want to do? You see, we mentioned before a candle, lighting, so neir le'echad, neir le'mea. Over here, you're not being moisif anything for anybody else. But if it's a type of malacha that we're concerned that he may do more, for example, the Alter Rebbe gives an example. I believe the example is, let's say the goy cut grass to feed his behemoth. So he brought hay, grass to feed his own animal. And there's leftover. Could the Yid feed his animal from the leftover grass that the goy cut for his own animal? Even though it wasn't for the Yid, it was for the goy's animal. Can the Yid, who is the goy's friend, use the leftover grass? And the answer is no, because we're concerned that the goy will be moisif, like next time or here, the goy will be moisif and doing a malacha by cutting extra grass for the Yid's behemoth as well.
I thought by an animal is a little bit less stringent because it's not a direct benefit.
No. It's for the Yid. No. There's another example, if you want, a goy cooking or roasting foods. Of course, not when it's bishul akum. That would be a separate issue. But let's say there is no issue of bishul akum, of a goy cooking food. Over here, we're concerned that he's going to do extra.
I think the mechaber, the classic example the mechaber brings is like a furnace, or not like our furnaces that heat the room, but if he's lighting, he has a fire going to warm people, and then other people
same idea.
Warm themselves, he's going to add wood because it's for more people. It's not like a candle that once you have one, what's the difference?
Yeah, it's known as Shema Yarbe Bishviloi. You may add for him. Versus if it's a candle, here the common expression is in Reish Ayin Vav Seif Yud Gimel. Neir le'echod, neir le'mea. If you lit one candle is, you're not being, there's no yarbe, once it's lit. So there is no real concern. There's no shash that he will add an additional neir, additional candle next time. Versus when it comes to grass or the cooking, whatever it is, there is. Okay, so in summation, basically, the Isser to benefit from a malacha that a goy did for the sake of a Yid, even if the Yid did not ask him to do the malacha, is asur. That's number one. Number two, it's also asur to benefit from any malacha that a Yid did, that a goy did for himself, but he knows that this type of malacha may be increased. Shema Yarbe Bishvilei may be increased for the sake of the Yid. Okay. So this is why there's an issue with Amir Lenochri, and this is why there's an issue of post facto benefiting from it as well. Shema Yarbe Bishvilei. He's not supposed to have any hana from it. So those are the cases, some examples of when Amir Lenochri would be asur, or the situation where a goy did a malacha would be asur to benefit from on Shabbos, even when it wasn't necessarily directly done for the Yid. There are cases when benefiting from Amir Lenochri is actually acceptable, is permissible, is mutter. So look at, Shin Lamed Daled, I don't know if you have it over here. But also, again, the Mishnah on Daf Kuf Chaf Aleph, the Mishnah says, when we learned before, that if a goy comes to extinguish a fire, right, Ein oimdim loy kabe, or loy sechabe, you don't tell him extinguish or don't extinguish. You don't have to stop him. And you could benefit from whatever he saved, from the whole house that he saved, or from the food, from the clothes, whatever he saved, you are allowed to benefit from. Frek the Magen Avraham brings Tosfos, and And the Magen Avram asks, why is it b'derech klal osur to benefit from a malacha that a goy does on Shabbos for the sake of a yid, and over here, when a goy is extinguishing a fire, which is a malacha that I said, by the way, extinguishing, right? Kiboy. When a goy extinguishes a fire, here suddenly is alt kosher yosher. Everything is mutter. What's going on over here? When he lights a candle for a yid, it's osur. But when he extinguishes a fire from a yid's house, and he saves them from a fire, or saves his house from a fire, it's all acceptable. So the Magen Avram, so Tosfos answers, he brings the Tosfos. Tosfos answers that when a goy extinguishes the fire, you're not benefiting directly from the there's no chiddush in a malacha that you're actually benefiting from.
What, like in its guf or something like that?
Not ein tzricha leguf yet, because it's not guf hayisrael nene mimenu. It's not guf hayisrael nene mimenu. It's not. In other words, there's no tangible hanoah from what he did as a malacha. You're not directly benefiting from his ma'aseh. In other words, there's no new creation over here that the guy did that you're benefiting from. He only took away a fire, but he didn't do something now that you're benefiting from. It's a new creation, a new malacha. Stehst. That's what he says.
Like you're benefiting from the lack of something rather than
from the header.
Right.
From the header. So in other words, it's an indirect benefit. It's not a direct benefit of anything. So therefore, if a goy is doing this, it's considered that he's doing it for his own sake, basically, as if he's doing it for his own sake. First of all, you can tell him, Kol misha shemechabe einay mafsid, whoever extinguishes it is not going to lose. You could indirectly say that. So he's doing it for his own sake. Versus if he opens a light or he lights a candle in a dark room, here you clearly have a direct benefit from what he did. There's a new creation over here. There's a malacha. In other words, the Chachamim only.
Which is funny because it almost comes across like Kiboy is like less of a malacha than than Havor.
It's not less. It's not. That's not the vort. The vort is.
It comes out to what's your benefit from it is the question.
That's it. Because Chazal made the Isser only when it comes to a direct, mamoshes a tangible kind of benefit created through a malacha. But if there's no direct benefit, then you're allowed of benefits. It's an indirect thing, and it's not a problem. It's not a problem. But still in all, the Mishnah says, Ein oimdim loy kabe or al techabe, because then there's a v'daber dover issue. Even this type of malacha, you may not direct him, you may not verbalize. Okay,
it's still a malacha at the end of the day.
Yeah, to extinguish something. That's why if you command him, you're over. That's the v'daber dover issue. That's the problem with v'daber dover. Furthermore, that's why the Mishnah says, you don't have to say al techabe. You don't have to say al techabe. You don't have to stop him. Like in other cases, if a goy is doing a malacha for you, if he's lighting a fire for you, you have to stop him. But over here, you don't have to. But to clearly and directly request of him to do a malacha, that you can't.
And it's similar. It's similar a little bit to like by a besdin when there's a thing that has like an intangible value. We're like, okay, on the one hand, it could be you're right, but there's nothing to collect. It's an intangible value. So on the one hand, you can't tell him because it's a melacha. At the same time, it's at the benefit. Okay, but there's no benefit. So
so it wasn't nichel. The gezerah was not That wasn't part of the Gzeda. The Gzeda is only to benefit from a malacha. Why? Because if you benefit from a malacha, a tangible malacha, you'll ask him lechatchila to do it. Right? The Shabbos will be kal beinov, and you'll lechatchila ask a guy to do it. And ultimately you may come to do it yourself. Like we said before. So based on this mahalach, if you can't, you have the same. I'll just share. This is actually a true story. There was someone. He's now a sheikh enough. What's the difference? There was a person who wasn't well. He was ill, and they were in a hotel. I think he was recuperating from a heart attack, and he was just. They were just trying to take it easy. He was trying to relax, and they were in a hotel, and the light was left on Shabbos, and he needed to sleep. So his wife goes to the maid, to whoever it is, the worker over there, and she says, my husband, he's not feeling well, and he really would like to go to sleep, but the light is on. And she says, lady, if you look, there's like a chain underneath the shade over there. So if you pull it, it'll go off. So obviously, that's remez shloiv derech tzivoy, failing. However, if the lights, let's say in your bedroom, are on, and a goy turns them off for you, not that it was a b'derech tzivoy, not that you told him turn it off. That you're not supposed to do. You may hint, you may say, "Oh, I'm so tired and I can't fall asleep. It's Shabbos and I'm not allowed to turn off the light." Whatever that. But over here, if a goy lemaisa, noticing that you're tossing and turning, and he turns the light off for you, you're allowed to benefit from it. What do you mean benefit? There's nothing tangible that the Isur is chal on. That's the word. And another example would be if an alarm goes off. An alarm goes off. And you call your goyish neighbor and to turn it off. Or the goyish neighbor comes and says, "Oh, it's Saturday. Oh, yeah, they're going to turn it off." Whatever it is. What are you benefiting from? It's not a problem. There's no issue of having a noah from Ma'aser Shabbos, having a noah from what a goy did. There's nothing tangible there. If a goy did something to benefit you, then there's something tangible. If a goy notices a face that your hat is dirty, face that your button is loose and they tie it, they sew it better, or they cleaned your hat, then there's a shaila. If you're allowed to wear your hat, if you're allowed to wear the shirt or the jacket, because here you have hana from a tangible malacha being done, whether it's a malabin, whether it's whatever malacha may have been. Over here, malacha is tangible. The results are tangible.
What do you mean? And light is not tangible?
Light on is, light off isn't. It's heteroid. I don't want to sound like, we're learning the Rebbe Shabbos.
Yeah, I know, but that's what I'm. So light is considered tangible, and an alarm is not considered tangible. For me, it's the same hana.
An alarm being shut off.
Yeah.
Now there's no sound. So what do you see? Before we mentioned Royim and Sanishma.
Right.
There wasn't Royim and Sanishma, and there's no Royim and Shein and Nishma.
In other words, the guy didn't create dark. He didn't create silence.
Correct. Can you do the joke, or maybe it's not so you do it? What do children do all day? They make all day, and after they finish making it, you don't see it. And the answer is not what you're thinking. The answer is noise.
So there's no problem then to tell if let's say my son left the yeshiva now and he forgot to turn off his alarm clock of his room and it turns on Shabbos.
That's something else. You don't need a goy for that. Because over here, and especially if you do it kalachayad, if you're causing that the alarm should not go on. You didn't do anything.
No.
You're not causing an electric. Huh?
On Shabbos morning, it starts beeping. I haven't guessed
Oh,
for Shabbos. I
okay.
thought about it today, so I'm thinking, what if I didn't? Right? I'm thinking today I'm going to have guests in his room on Shabbos, and I'm going to forget. I reminded myself to not forget to put his alarm, because then my guests are going to be woken up at 8 o'clock in the morning. So
Right.
if I forgot, and now 8 o'clock in the morning, and they're with their baby, and it starts making noise, so I'm allowed to go to a guy and tell him straight up and turn off the alarm.
If it's for the sake of children,
Is
it's
another
not.
story, which I guess
That's
we'll talk
a
about
child.
soon.
That's Chayla Shein Beisakana. It's a
Yeah. Because you mentioned children. If
Right.
it's for
But what
adults,
if
it
it's just a young couple?
has to be
without the
Shlei
baby?
B'derech Tzivoy. The dem is Shlei B'derech Tzivoy. You're just lamenting
Right.
that it's Shabbos and you can't turn off the clock.
Right.
And if he says, so you want me to turn it off? And if you say, yeah, you just did a Tzivoy.
Right. Okay, I follow.
You have to keep on speaking in riddles. If he said, you want me to
Right.
turn it off? I can't tell you.
Right. Now, you're going to, in today's shir, besides giving the background in this, you're going to speak also, because the way I came to the shir was thinking that practical, like it's called, Melachos HaMatzos B'Beis HaKnesses, of things that happen.
Okay, yeah. I'll try to get to that, but I want to do a yisod.
No, I got you.
You're welcome to ask the questions, but I think there'll be
I don't have any questions off the mind, but I'm.
I think there's an added appreciation if you know the yisod.
100%. I'm enjoying it. Don't get me wrong. I'm just want to know that we're gonna get there. That's the guy to that. Okay.
I don't know if you enjoy. I don't see any of you. I just hear you.
But I want to mention.
You're seeing.
I want to mention also.
You're enjoying it.
Okay.
Talking about what was just mentioned by us, the typical question is going to be: you come into Shul on Shabbos and it's too hot, and you want the air conditioner turned on, or it's too cold and you want the heater turned on. How do you go about with the guy to do that? So you'll address it probably later, but that's what I'm interested in hearing that.
Yeah. Okay. Please. If I don't address it, I'm going to try to address it, and if I don't, please remind me.
All right.
Good question. In the hotel situation, you mentioned the guy was sick, even though he wasn't deathly sick. But in that case, when you have, isn't it by Chayla Afilu She'ein Beisakana? It's much lighter in terms of.
Yeah. I'm just telling you the Ma'aser Shahoya. I'm not telling you what they could have, would have, should have done. But that was a prelude to the Ma'aser, to the halacha.
Okay, so don't ask questions on the mushals.
It's not a mushal. It was a Ma'aser Shahoya.
Never know. I flag nicht auf the Ma'aser, whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, kasha for Ma'aser. Just telling you, it was a prelude. The Ma'aser Shahoya was a prelude to what we said over here. It was a Ro Ma'aser v'nisker halacha. So, okay. Another dogma of where it's mutter to benefit from a malacha done by a goy for the sake of a goy, for the sake of a yid, by a goy for the sake of a yid, is if the malacha only is goydem an added level, in other words, a toisvus hanoah, an added benefit, it's not a complete new benefit. It's only a toisvus hanoah, an added benefit. Why? Look, Dal Tereben Reish Ayin Vov Sif Yudalid says that if a goy lights a candle for a yid, we mentioned it before. If a goy lights a candle for a yid in a room that already has a candle. Okay, so let's say there's a bulb burning, there's a candle burning, and he lit a second one. Here, you're allowed to have enough from the additional one as long as the first candle is still burning. Why? Because as long as the first candle is still burning, all you're having now is a toisvis hanoah. Toisvis hanoah. And this would apply even if you're talking about doing things in the room that would have been not so convenient, not so easy, would have been a little challenging, a little difficult with only one ner, with only one bulb. And the second bulb makes it more easy, more attainable. Nevertheless, it's called Toisus Hano, because it wasn't impossible to do it. It was a little less convenient. Now it's more convenient. That's called Toisus Hano. So the added Toisus Hano, the added level of Hano, is not nichlal in the Gzeda of the Chacham. That wasn't the problem. That's not the problem. But the problem would be, where is the problem? If the original candle goes out, and now you're left sitting only with the additional candle that the goy lit, and now you're solely benefiting from what the goy lit. Here you're not allowed to have enough from that. Because now you're fully having ano from a malacha, which with basically from a candle, a malacha, which is benefiting someone and preventing someone from sitting in the pitch dark. Incidentally, the Alter Rebbe brings another day that says you're allowed to benefit from the second licht, from the second candle, even after the first one goes out. But he says you could rely on it only b'makom tzorech gadol, only when there's great need, not stam. However, you don't have to leave your house. The Gzeir of the Chacham was never to make a person leave your house. That was never part of the Gzeir. Like they say, Moshe, a guy turned on the air conditioning in his house. It was in his bedroom, and it was obviously for the sake of a yid. And it wasn't an emergency. It wasn't. It was livable, I guess. Without it, I guess he turned it on, or someone told him to turn it on for him. And what he did was he opened the bedroom door in order that the benefit, the hano from the AC, shouldn't be there. So, practically speaking, let's use a practical. What happens if the lights of your house go off? Let's say your main, whatever it is, the breaker goes off, is triggered, and then a goy comes and turns all the lights on. Do you have to leave your house? So clearly, the Alter Rebbe, Reish Ayin Vov Siv Beis, writes that if a goy turns on the light in your house on his own accord without being asked, you don't have to leave. You're just not supposed to have enough from what he did.
That's what that. In other words, like pidu. What was it? Like pidu ad kidei kach, that you have to leave your house. Well, I forget what lashon is.
Yeah, correct. But you're just not supposed to have a no from whatever you weren't able to have a no without what the guy did. But if you actually told him to turn on the lights, then it would possibly require you to leave the house, or at least to. I remember hearing, I can't validate it. So if it's not true, I'm making a disclaimer right away. I believe it was in Free, when the Rebbe would go visit the various different moistus the first night of Pesach to see how the Stodim are going, the Rebbe went to Free, to the Russians as well. Free, Hadara Toida, and the yeshiva. And so when the Rebbe went to Free, I think when the Rebbe was about to go down the stairs, the light went off. And then a second later, and I don't know by who, it could have been anyone with good intentions. It could have been some Freie people, whatever it was. A second later, I think the light went back on. and the Rebbe was going down the stairs, shamaiti, like holding on or something, with his eyes closed. Kach shamaiti. Al kolponim.
So what if in the same case it's chveis? Let's say it's a utility worker guy, and he puts your thing on, but you told him not to. You asked him not to do it.
What do you mean, a utility guy? He's working on electricity. He turned it off and turned it on. He's doing his job for himself.
No. I'm saying there was a blackout. So and or whatever, the thing went off. There was whatever it is, or let's say it's Tom, a guy you told the guy not to, and I don't know whether he forgot or he did it anyways, and he goes and he turns it on. But you specifically told him don't turn the electricity on.
So then you don't have to. I mean, you have to be moiche. And you have to send him away because if he's insubordinate, you can't hold on to such a worker.
Right. That's right. You have to get rid of him. But that's why I was implying it's a guy that lav dafka. Do you have that? In other words, it's not a guy that works for you regularly or something. So you don't have that option to really. He turned it on. He left. You're not going to see him again.
and also again, we have to take into account: was it light? Was it during the day anyway? Let's say. It wasn't at night. It was during the day, so you had light in your house anyway. Now there's only Toisus Hano. Toisus Hano is not an issue. And it also applies to even, sometimes you have a Goyish worker putting up a kettle, a coffee. Obviously, if he does it for Yidden, or even for some, partially for Yidden, that would be also. If he made you a coffee and it was only a Toisus Hano, you already had your shot of caffeine. Now you're getting a second shot of caffeine. Is that considered a Taisus Hanor? Is it considered something tangible? Basically it's you could do without it. You didn't really need it. Some people need 3 cups of coffee to even start the first hour of the day. Some people, once they had one, or they already had 2, and they're good. So if he makes them a 3rd cup, it's,
Which seems counterintuitive. It seems counterintuitive because if you don't need it, why are you drinking it?
Just in case. And a chanami, but I'm just saying, lemaisa. He doesn't really need it. It's toisus ano because he likes coffee, but he doesn't need it. He can do without it. He likes the taste. He's bored. Well, I don't know. Ask him. The same thing, talking about giving the mushal with the Moshe and the AC. What happens if it's okay? It's 73 degrees, 75 degrees in the room. It's not terrible. It's not comfortable, but it's not terrible. It's bearable. And now he turned it on. Right? So now it's 70, not 75. So in a way, is it called Toisus Hana?
Well, but do you go by what it is or by what it's gonna be? Because, for example, let's say the air conditioner turns off, and it's fine right now. It says whatever. Even say he turns it on, he turns it back on, and it's 70 still, but it's a 98-degree day outside, and within an hour it would have become close to it would have become 80 inside. Is it still only called Teisra Noah? Like, do we only go by what's now, or do we project forward?
But it's not only that. If it was completely done by the goy, it's not toisus ano. It's not one candle and now you have a second candle. The malacha is completely from scratch done by the goy.
And
the
meaning,
coffee,
he's putting on he's putting on another air conditioning unit as opposed to like yours went off and he's turning it. Mom is turning it on.
Correct. Anyway, okay. So okay. In summation, we're going to go into, but in summation over here, the reason, the problem with hinting, the problem is number one. There's exeda shema yarbe b'shviloi, that he may do a malacha more so next time, like the mushal with the grass, and the second issue is the malacha done by the goy doesn't create something new. So sometimes you could indirectly benefit from the outcome of the malacha, like extinguishing a flame, extinguishing a fire from one's home. There's no outcome clearly there to benefit from or not to benefit from, and therefore it's not a problem. And then you have Toisus Hano, where the goy adds an additional benefit to a pre-existing light over here. So if number one is he does it for himself, so there's no shash of Shemayara B'Shviloi, because he's doing it for himself. Number two, it was done, he's not really creating anything new. There's nothing tangible. And number three, it's only a Toisvus Hano. He's adding a licht over there. So those are the three cases where it would not be an issue, why sometimes you're allowed to benefit from the nochri, from the malacha of what the nochri is doing. Okay, we're not going to get into, okay, in the next thing is, we'll take a shtickle break for a few minutes, and then when we get back, we'll try to talk about a practical remez, AC, steam, whatever you mentioned before.
And also bedafka as it applies to a tzibur would be a good thing.
As it applies to a tzibur, you mean in many cases,
meaning there's practical in a home, there's practical as it applies to a shul, and there can be different things.
Yeah, tzorech rabim as opposed to a yachid.
There's also an issue which I know many from they talk about it. If turning on electricity is minatara or it's shvus, they say there's a difference between a light bulb or just turning on like an air conditioner. So that's another issue that maybe we could.
And then there's the Chazon Ish who's machmir, because he said closing a circuit is baina, opening a circuit, meaning when you close the light, you're opening a circuit. So it's soiser. When you open the light, you're closing a circuit, and that's baina. Besides, that would be even by a fluorescent, even by an LED.
Question is that something that we follow? Because I know a lot of people are making certain things because it's possibly not a minatara, it's only the Rabbana.
Yeah, generally speaking, yeah.
Unless I think with lights it's different because you have a heating up an element. Fire.
So the ones that burn or that burn something burns a little bit as a result of that is considered eish. The LED or the fluorescent is considered, as a matter of fact, in the Chveis and near the 1900s, 1920s, whenever the fluorescent bulbs were invented, there were many Rabbonim, big Talmid Chachamim, who said it's not a problem of opening them and closing them, certainly in Yom Tov. Okay, whatever. Then they found out, what electricity is and what the circuits are, and b'chulu. We left. We'll try to do something. We'll try to do practical applications, at least on some level over here. So let's see. First of all, someone mentioned electricity on Shabbos. Electricity on Shabbos, b'chlal, there's a machlekes if it's midaraisa, midarabonon. And like we mentioned before, if it burns, if it creates something to burn up, like certain bulbs or fires or gas or coils, obviously that's havara, that's minatoira. And other things could be midrabanon, but it's still also al kaponim. So now the question is, can you do certain things through a goy? Like for instance, let's say if the lights go out on Shabbos. So if there's tzoyrich gadol, then, and it's impossible to do it al yedei remez, it's impossible to hint shaloi beloshen tzivoy, not in a direct way, which incidentally, if you hint in a way, let's say you tell a goy, it's hot, could you open the window? But he knows full well that you don't mean you're tzikrach in a window, that he means that you need him to open. If he understands that you mean the AC, it's like you're giving him a tzivoy. But if it's remez shaloi b'derech tzivoy. If you're hinting to him without, clearly commanding him to turn on the lights, that's the best. But if you can't, if he doesn't understand or the situation doesn't allow for it, you could be makel for him to turn on the light, because it's tzorech mitzvah derabim. In a shul, we're talking about tzorech mitzvah derabim, and when there's a mitzvah derabim, they have to be able to see the davening, v'cholu v'cholu, and if they don't see it, then they can't daven, they can't learn, and there is an issue. Yeah, so far so good.
Would this also be true with air conditioners and heaters?
Okay. Yeah, in short, yeah, but there is a difference, and there are similarities. So let's comb through it a little bit. So what happens if they forget to turn on the AC before Shabbos? Right? If they forget to turn on the AC before Shabbos, or let's say it was cool before Shabbos, so they thought they wouldn't need the AC on Shabbos. And now, obviously, suddenly the weather is very, very hot, and it's intolerable. Here you could be makel to have a goy turn it on. Again, ideally, if you could hint remez shloi b'derech tzivoy, if you could do it that way, that's most ideal. If you can't, you could even direct a goy to turn it on, for the sake of, again, it's a mitzvah derabim. We're talking about a shul. We're talking about people, or it's tzorech gadol. And it's the truth is, it's difficult to ascertain and to establish what's considered a tzorech gadol, because it depends on many things. What's the weather outside like? Are you living in Miami, or are you living in New York, or are you living in LA, or are you living in Las Vegas? You're living in where are you living? Like what's the situation? What's the weather? Summer, winter, spring, fall? What's the situation? Number one. How many people are there? How many people are filling that room? Are there windows? In other words, would opening windows help, or are you still going to feel? In other words, in Miami, many times if you open the window, it gets worse. Hardly, if obviously there's always a breeze, but if you open the window, you're allowing the humidity and the intensity of the heat to come in. So sometimes it's worse depending on the situation. Are there people who are not well, cholim, zikenim? What's the situation? A little inconvenience is not considered tzorech gadol. I'm not so comfortable. I wouldn't lechatchila choose this room to spend my time over here. Is not considered tzorech gadol. So that would depend. People have conditions. People have health challenges. There's also an interesting Igros Moshe. There's a Moshe that says that if they turn on the AC, that's like the other half of your question. What happens if they turn on the AC and now it's really cold? They set it at a very low temperature and now it's really cold. Or some people are very sensitive to the cold draft. And some of the mispalalim, poshut can daven in the Beis HaKnesses, even if they are a minority. Here you're allowed to tell the goy to shut it off. But this would apply if it's really, really cold, not if it's a little inconvenient. It's really cold, because over here you have a klal, hakol cholim eitzel tzina. When it comes to cold, you could push it, become sick. You can become sick.
Right.
And what happens if you have an argument? This is a Yiddish minig. You have an argument. Some are complaining that it's warm. Some are complaining that it's cold. They can't take it. It's too cold. And some are complaining that it's cold. What are you talking about? On what planet are you living? So even if the majority consider it cold or warm, you don't necessarily it's not necessarily so pashut to tell a goy to turn it on or to turn it off, because you have other people who hold it different to them, which means it's not such a clear, tangible case. You can't call it a tzorech gadol. You can't say, "Oh, it's so hot; it's 170 degrees over here," when other people are saying it's cold. So give me a break. Obviously, it's not that intensely hot. It may be uncomfortable, but it's not like, sweltering. But if some people are cholim, zakenim, then you take that into consideration as well. Am I being a little clear or what? Any question? So what did you want to ask? You wanted to ask something?
I want to ask, could I ask you, I have this issue by me a lot. Now, what I prefer is that before Shabbos, we set the air conditioner. You could set it that it goes to a certain temperature or whatever it is. And I have this issue that, we have a guard. Many shuls have a guard. He's not Jewish. And he often comes in and, if we need, I really don't like that he should do it in front of the whole tzibur. Is there an issue with that? I feel it's almost like a zilzal of people will say, okay, this guy can come in and turn things off and on but yes, some of the other people say it's okay. Is there an issue about a person, if he does it, he shouldn't do it in public? Or if it's mutter, it doesn't matter.
The latter, correct. There are guidelines, maybe you could explain to them. Sometimes people could be misled when they see you doing this. They say, oh, okay, he could cook, he could make my chont, and he could drive my car, and he could do this and do that. So obviously, if clarity is needed, then maybe a shir in Hilchos Shabbos could clarify that, or maybe the Shabbos sermon can clarify it. That there are certain situations. There's tzorech gadol, there's amir lenochri, there's remes, shleim derech tzivui. All of these things can be clarified, or the do's and don'ts of Shabbos, or at least when it comes to goyim. When a Shabbos goy is acceptable and when a Shabbos goy is unacceptable.
Now the inyan of remes, okay, but the Eved, you could even tell him, right? If you can't be merames.
If it's tzorech gadol, yeah. If it's mitzvah the rabbim, yeah.
So here's the thing: you have this guard. He knows already about this business. Could you tutor him before Shabbos and tell him that if I go like this, it means you do this? Or if I say it's warm, so you're basically letting him know the rules. You're not telling him to turn it off. You tell him it's warm. He knows right away to come and turn it off. Or it's like telling him.
So
because every guy, every Shabbos that's there, he's a guard.
Right. The Alter Rebbe says that if you pointing is also like a tzivui. If you understand from the pointing, if you take your finger and you point over there, you're pointing to the AC. Or if you point over there, it means you're pointing to the boiler. Or whatever it is, it's like tzivui. It's what you could tell them. It's it's hot in here, and when it's tzorech gadol. If it's not tzorech gadol and he's a worker, it's like he's listening to your commandment. In a way, it's like tzivui. In a way, it's like you're making up that. So again, it has to be tzorech gadol. It has to be tzorech rabim, tzorech mitzvah, shvus to shvus, b'mokim mitzvah. Not just a malacha deraisa.
It's a big problem, and I don't know the solution, because in the shul you have a lot of people and a lot of opinions. So this guy decides, you should turn the air conditioner on, and the guy comes and turns it on. This guy says, I don't like it this way. I need the window open because of COVID. So he opens up the window, and if I get involved, it becomes the whole balagan. So it's very complicated and strange.
Mistama, that's why some shuls have locks on the AC switches. And at least that's taken care of. As far as the windows are probably not supposed to have locks for safety reasons. Or maybe not. Unless if they're emergency exits, then maybe windows could have locks.
No. Locks doesn't work. I mean, there's certain people, they need fresh air, and if they need it, the whole shul has to have it. The air conditioner is going, the windows are open, and the fans are going.
Halavai mi yitin that a 2 hour, even a 2 hour shir in Hilchos Shabbos could solve all of these Yiddish problems.
All right.
Then you have an interesting shaila talking about going to shul. What happens if you have an elderly person who wants to go to shul? The shul, let's say the minyan is on the second floor, or the shul is on the fourth floor in this building, and he can't go up the stairs. He's elderly, he's weak. Can he ask a goy to take him in the elevator or to push the buttons? The answer in short is no, especially elevators which may involve isideraisa, with pressing and turning on lights, or activating, depending on the type of elevator, depending on the situation. A minyan is a chiyuv midrabanon, and Shabbos is Shabbos. So not necessarily is it acceptable for a yid to go in an elevator. Besides, if it's not a Shabbos elevator, some are matir to go in a Shabbos elevator, especially for a choyle, for a zokin, because the pashat gives them a lot of chizuk, otherwise they're at home alone and they're depressed, they become depressed. That's a whole separate shaila that you have to understand how to tackle, because even for, let's say, if you say a healthy person shouldn't use a Shabbos elevator, it's not acceptable, it's not in the spirit of Shabbos. You have to find a heter for someone who would be home and depressed and find no purpose in life by sitting home rather than going to shul and joining a minyan and being a little bit of a macher by enabling him or her to use the Shabbos elevator where there are heterim. So that's a different story. Similarly over here also, if the guy's going to be depressed, unless the goy takes him up the elevator, that's also something to take into account. Also could be considered Mokim Tzayich Gadol. But again, not every situation is the same. But getting back to what I wanted to say, especially if the elevators are not Shabbos elevators, you're breaking the rays. There are rays which detect whether or not the person is going in or out of the elevator to prevent the door from closing and hurting the person. When you're going in, you're turning on and off the light, which is an issue in and of itself. Let me, you know what, I think this is also practical. I have over here a list of Shabbos in a hotel. How does that sound? That covers, huh? I see someone nodding his head. I don't see.
Sounds practical.
I like it.
You like it. I see someone with the headphones nodding his head.
Could I ask you one thing before you mention? Okay. Let me know if you agree with this. Oftentimes, as an elderly person, and you can't come to shul because you can't walk, if you get a guy to push him in a wheelchair. So I'll tell you what somebody told me, or Rav told me. If it's a man, you can have a guy push him to shul because it's a chiyuv for a man to daven in a shul. If it's a woman, you're not allowed to because there's no chiyuv for a woman to come Shabbos to shul. Is that accurate? Is that the way it is?
Yeah, but in the wheelchair,
also it's just a rabbin. It's not necessarily a real.
It's a carnivalist. It's supposed to shul. It's a carnivalist. However, he shouldn't have a siddur. He shouldn't have anything in the wheelchair. Shouldn't have any additional packages in the wheelchair carried unnecessarily.
But the distinction between a man and woman is accurate.
Generally speaking, yeah, unless again she's home and depressed and can't go out, and this, and Shabbos is the day when she meets and greets all of her friends and has chont with them, even though in general the answer is no, but there may be certain exceptions. You have to know, you have to understand what the situation is, but in general the answer is no. Correct.
What's the story with a walker?
So a walker, are we allowed to talk about this? It's not electricity.
No, because it's like
a walker.
No,
yeah.
It's
so
like
whenever,
cane, for example, a cane.
The rule of thumb is whatever you're going to use indoors to get around with, a cane a walker, whatever you cannot do without indoors, you may do with outdoors, because that's the way you walk. So if a person
without
has
it,
a cast,
you push it, wouldn't be able to walk without it.
so if a person has a cast and he walks around with crutches indoors, then outdoors is the same. A walker, or sometimes these scooters. When a person has a cast,
Yeah, they put one knee on the
one knee,
thing, and then they go.
but that's the way he gets around indoors as well. You're not supposed to walk on your foot. So that's al derech a walker. That would be the rule of thumb. Okay. Also, there's an interesting, talking about COVID, Abrius, talking about COVID, there's certain, okay, we'll get to it in a moment. You know what? I'm jumping.
There's also a difference, I think, between prosthetics, if it's something you walk on or it's something that's just there to look like you had, like someone has a leg. I think there's a difference also, no, because the prosthetic you walk on, that's how you walk. The one that's just there for, you're carrying something, you're not using it really.
Okay. All right. So, okay, when it comes to, let's say, hotel rooms on Shabbos, or it doesn't have to, you could use the word hotel, you could use the word shul, you could use the word room, and it may or may not apply in all cases, or neither. Obviously, you have to set lights. You have to, some rooms have sensors. Some toilets have sensors. You have to cover those sensors. Okay, you can't just ask a goy to turn lights on and off for you. You can't directly ask them. Public bathrooms have automatic sensors, motion sensors. You have to put tape over the sensors. And there's a whole shaila. I remember reading a shaila. It's not so funny. What happens if a guy goes into the bathroom and there's a motion sensor? He discovers there's a motion sensor. Is he allowed to go out? Is he allowed to leave? Because leaving is going to turn off the light on Shabbos. Or if he notices that the toilet has a sensor, a flusher, is he allowed to stand up? Is he allowed to leave? Is he allowed to? Okay, well, it's not so. I'm just saying, it's not. It may be a little humorous, but it's not ladafke. And you have to be aware of these things in advance. Sometimes you could have a Shabbaton, you could have a shul minyan in another room that has, or in a room that has these things, or that has new installments going on, and you have to be on top of your game over there. You have to make sure all lights are on. You have to adjust the thermostats before Shabbos, so there's no need to ask a goy. Kapashut. Sometimes when you walk in the hallway, the lights suddenly go on. This is usually like South America, Europe, certain hotels. I don't think it's so relevant or so predominant when it comes to American hotels, but certain hotels, they save electricity and it's off in the hallways the whole time. And suddenly when you go, there's a sensor that detects you and the lights go on. That could be an issue.
Here that's more common in the hotel bathrooms. They have these things. I've seen a lot.
Yeah.
Not the bathroom in the room necessarily, but the bathrooms in the hallway and these kind of things.
Talk about hallways in general. Erev Chatzeres, according to the, based on a letter of the Rebbe, Erev Chatzeres is not needed in a hotel. Generally speaking, it's owned by one person, whatever it is. The sinks sometimes, okay, whatever. Certain sensor, certain hot water, whatever it is. Light bulbs in the refrigerator. Light bulbs in the refrigerator could be an issue. What do you do? Sometimes you open a refrigerator and you discover that the light bulb wasn't turned off, wasn't taken out. What could you do? So here again, if it's Mokum Tzedek, you're not going to have food for Shabbos. The food is going to get spoiled. A simple solution, maybe it's not so simple, is like to put a towel on the fridge door and it doesn't fully close so the light stays on. And like when you're opening and closing it, but the chances are that it's going to be more of a closet than a refrigerator. You're leaving the closet light on and the food potentially goes bad. So here in a remes shloiv derech tzivoy, if you could inform a goy of your dilemma and have that taken care of, it would be the best. Otherwise, mokim tzorech, sometimes you could. It's interesting. What happens if you reminded yourself that you didn't take out the bulb, and the fridge is closed? You didn't even open it yet. So technically speaking, according to many poskim, you could tell the goy to take something out, because psik reshe by a goy, amida lenochri, there's no such a thing as psik reshe. You're telling the goy to take out the chicken from the refrigerator, take out the milk from the refrigerator. You're not telling him to turn on the light. What happens, psik reshe, what happens automatically is not your intent. It's like telling him to take out your tefillin from a car, or a sefer from a car that you really need, whatever it is, even though the light goes on. There's no issue because you didn't tell the goy to turn on the light, and that's psik reshe. Psik reshe doesn't really apply, it's not really an issue. Even though, I think it's Shlomo Zalman, he says that when you tell the goy to open the refrigerator, it's like you're telling him to turn on the light, because that's typically what happens. Not everyone agrees, but according to him, it would be an issue. But whatever it is, all these high-tech digital things, if they could be regulated or turned off before Shabbos, obviously that should take place.
The keys are also always a problem.
Well,
the electronic keys.
Correct, like the card. The electronic, the card, you would have to probably leave your door open. Or someone once told me a trick. You tie, like make believe the handle, I just want to give you a visual. Make believe the handle of the inside of the door, inside of the room, is a yo-yo. So you're tying a string, of course, before Shabbos, to the handle, and you have a long string going out, and it sticks out from underneath the door to the hallway. And what you're doing is you're pulling it down. So you're opening, the handle is going down without using the magnetic or electronic activations. Not all doors lend themselves to that, but that could be a solution. Kach shamaiti, I never tried it. Al kaponim kach shamaiti. If you want to try it.
People often do is they ask a guy to open up the door for them. But that's also an issue.
That's b'diavad. L'chatchila, you should, unless you're afraid of theft, l'chatchila, you should leave it open.
You should be afraid of theft.
L'chatchila, you shouldn't fully close it. You should leave it slightly ajar, where you don't have to activate any electronic devices. The lights go on and off. It electronically locks and unlocks. You'd rather not go there. Some hotels.
You'd rather stay home. That's what you mean. You'd rather stay home. You should rather stay home.
Some hotels offer especially Yiddish hotels, have the option of keys for Shabbos. During the week, they have these cards, and on Shabbos, they give you the keys. But generally speaking, it's not so pashut for the guy to open the door for you. You're basically, you should leave it open a little bit. Electronic doors, meaning the automatic doors that open, you should try to go through it when a guy is going through it. Once he did it for himself, you could join him. But if a yid triggered the doors, you could walk through. What else will be relevant for hotels? Elevators, obviously, like we said before, modern elevators have sensors that trigger the doors. That's an issue. Having a goy press the button, like we said before, is an issue.
Question for hotel. Hot water pots, even if they have one set up for even Yiddish Shabbatones, a big chainik or whatever, it's very common by hotels. They want to save energy, that they're going to unplug and replug it in. Or the lights that you have in the main shul room, they're going to turn it off. They're turning it on. So it would seem it's for their hana, even though technically it's your hana, you're using it. But for it's odd, you would have left it on the whole time. The only reason they turned it off in the first place is because they're just trying to save some money on electricity. So how does that is that accurate, or is that actually a problem? Not a lot of benefit from such light.
1 second, they turn it back on?
Yeah, they turn it off. They know your event is going until 12 or 1 or whatever. They wait until you're out of the room, the dining room, the hall, that you rented. And then they're going to turn it back on before you come in the morning at 9 o'clock, 9:30.
Right. So like you said, so l'chura, without that, they're doing it dafka for you.
Right.
Really, they're not doing it dafka for you. They're doing it in a way to save for themselves because you left it on.
Right.
But is it your rent? Is it your room that you rented?
Yes, I think most of these cases you're renting the.
So it's your room. So it's your room. So you did what you did, and they interfered and decided to turn it on, to turn it off, and turn it on for their benefit.
Right.
Okay. Is there a problem with using something?
The problem is on the flip side, they're
Shabbos?
turning it off for your
like
benefit.
you heated up water on Shabbos.
Well, what do you say?
The guy's heating it up on Shabbos. Are you allowed to benefit from it?
If the goy is heating it up, so that was the Hakdama we gave before, or the scenario. If the goy is doing the malacha for Yidden, it's a problem.
But by cooking, I think it's even worse, no?
Okay. But over here, typically the goy is doing a malacha for Yidden. Over here, he's heating up the water. Not for himself, it's for the sake of Yidden. Or Roy people over there, the Shabbaton over there, are Yidden, let's say. If it's for goyim primarily, and it's in the lobby and they heat it up for goyim, come and clear it. It's not for a yid. But generally speaking, if they do it having the yidden in mind and they are also their customers, it's a problem.
I want to go back to what Rabbi Welton brought up.
Yeah.
Is this thing of the turning it on and off and on for their own benefit to save electricity. So on the one hand, you can say like that, but on the flip side, you could say they're turning it off for their benefit. They're turning it on, even though take, the only reason they know they can turn it off is if they turn it on again. But the fact is, if you were willing to do it in the dark, they would leave it off the whole time because they would save electricity then also. So in a sense, they're turning it off for them, but really they're turning it on for you.
And let me ask you a question. If a janitor walks by the light, he accidentally hits it, he flicks it off. Then he says, "Oh, I'm sorry," and he puts it back on. Could he not daven there, or he did it for himself? He did it for himself because people are going to scream at him. What do you do?
Fine, but in that case, he's doing it as working for you, essentially.
He did it for himself. He did it because he was afraid that he was going to get, He did it for himself.
Okay, but fine. But if we're gonna say that, then even if it was off in the first place, they didn't turn it off and back on for you. They went and turned it on the chatchila for you. Fine, they're gonna get screamed at if they don't, so they're turning it on. But who are they gonna get screamed at by? The client, the Jew.
The Jews are going to complain after Shabbos. The Jews are going to complain. But which is
Jews are going to complain all the time, but
yeah. No, but over here, again, you left it on. He's doing himself a favor by saying, "You know what? I'm going to hold that thought until tomorrow, 9 o'clock when it starts. I'm going to leave it off for myself."
In other words, essentially,
he was
only able to turn it off. Al manas to turn it on. So therefore. In other words, if not, if he couldn't turn it on again, he wouldn't have turned it off. So, okay, fine.
Surveillance cameras.
I'll buy that.
surveillance cameras. You have that in a shul. You have that in a hotel. You have as long as the surveillance cameras, b'chlal, are a continuous feed. In other words, it has a continuous feed unit.
Meaning it doesn't turn on from sensing emotion or something like this. Meaning
Exactly, it's an ayin roya v'oizen shemas the whole time, not mugbal to anything. So it doesn't. Yeah.
No, for sure. If
That,
not,
that one.
if
Otherwise, if your
not,
actions,
how would Reb Leivik ever have done anything? His place was bugged all the time.
that's a psikreshe deloy nichale. That's another heter when it comes to it. Psikreshe deloy nichale. How could you walk in the street on Shabbos when you know that 30 to 70% of the lights Friday night open as you walk by? You have motion sensors and their front lights open. So tack over there, if you could easily take another route, so be it. Otherwise, it's a psikreshe deloy nichale.
Could I?
It's asik.
I know you're not supposed to ask shilas that are not on the subject, but you're talking about hotels. If you go to a hotel, and in every room usually they have a coffee maker with coffee, and it's usually used just for hot water and coffee and maybe tea. Could you depend on using that and not being afraid of kashrus issues, or you should not use it because maybe somebody used it for something treif?
Right. So
maybe you don't want to answer it now. It's not on the subject.
So okay, so in short, so some Rabbanim say stam kelem einam b'nei yoimon for starters. Additionally, they can't really. They could have used it for soup, but generally speaking, another issue is if when they wash it out, or do they wash it out with other kelim and dishwashers? Now, how do they do it? Or do they not wash it out? They just scrub it out. Okay, well, it's not for now, but I think many Veltasher Rabbanim are materit because it's simply, generally speaking, used only for coffee. Can't really be used for much else. Certainly the ones with the pods. The other ones could be used for soup or other things to warm up, which may be an issue. And then you have to rely on stam kaleim and b'nei. It's not so pashut. It depends which ones. So sometimes you have workers in the hotel. They have to do some work on weekdays, but you cannot pay workers just for Shabbos work. Grama, indirect actions are permitted in some cases. You have a psikreshe loy nichale, we just mentioned over there. Psikreshe loy nichale. So if if a deer is in your home and you could close the door, even though it will trap the deer, but it's not your intention. Your intention is you want to keep other people out.
But it can't just be not your intention. It has to be also that it's not something. If it's not your intention, but I'm saying if you want the deer and you're gonna, it's a good thing. Then it's different.
Right. So
in our case, in our days, it's not so common. Nobody's gonna know what to do with a deer. But
unless you're in some hotel in the Sahara Desert. Anyway. If you have motion sensors in your hotel room, some hotels have motion sensors. They turn on and off the lights, or they turn on and off the heat, on and off the air conditioning. Leaving the room would pose less of a problem because turning off the lights, the air conditioning, doesn't benefit the guest. Not that you want to do it, but it doesn't benefit you, and the results are not, it doesn't happen immediate. It's indirect, and it doesn't have. It's groma. It doesn't happen immediate, whatever it is. But entering the room is more of an issue. It activates, it triggers either the lights or the heat or the AC. It's more of an issue. So a solution like Amida Lenochri and Psikresha, like we said before, with opening the fridge. If you ask a goy to go into your room, you ask a worker to go into your room, obviously for a reason other than to engage the motion sensor. You want to ask him to bring a pillow or something. That would be a solution. You need another pillow. You need another sheet. But like we mentioned before, the motion sensors on a toilet, you know, you have a hand-free flushing and what do you do? This is a covered abrius thing. What do you do if that's the only option? You don't have, you know, the 1970s option and the 2024 option. You only have the 2024 option. The 1970s are gone. So what do you do? So if you have no choice, it may be permissible because it's covered abrius, and this is only an isur. This is an isur d'Rabbanan, but it's covered abrius, human dignity.
What's the thing with having him bring a pillow? When a thing's going to be triggered?
Yeah, the motion sensor is going to go on. The light is going to go on. The AC is going to go on.
In other words, why? Because essentially, in this case, he's your shliach. Not the thing that he's your shliach for is not an issur.
Exactly, it's for the pillow. It's a psikresha, a middle enochli by psikresha. There's no psikresha by middle enochli. Even though inevitably it's going to turn on. You ask them, you want a pillow.
Right, but meaning the thing that he's not your shliach to cut off the light. It's psikresha. He's gonna cross the thing, but the thing that he's your shliach for is the dobra muter, is bringing a pillow.
Correct.
Okay, fine.
That. Okay, what else? Anything that I missed? I mean, there are a few more things that I have in mind, but if you want to ask a question before I get to that, for instance, what happens if you're going to lose? Like to ask a goy to turn off because you're going, before you mentioned in a hotel where they're going to lose, so they voluntarily turn it off. What happens if the electricity, if the bill is going to cost me a lot of money, and I would rather have it off in between hours? Is it acceptable or not? You know what I'm saying?
Repeat the scenario.
Asking a goy to do the malach of kiboy, right? Okay. Now, the malach of kiboy, min ha-Torah, is only if you're extinguishing to do pacham, to make soot.
It's the tzayich gufa. It's you need the actual thing. Yeah.
Otherwise, it's a malacha shein tzarich legufa. The majority of kiboy would be midrabanan, according to most poskim, because all you're doing it, it's a malacha midrabanan. It's a malacha shein tzarich legufa.
It's either you don't want the light, or it's you want to conserve the oil or something of that nature.
Right, but lemaisa they're machmir in a shvus of malacha shein tzarich legufa more than other isuri derabanan. Lemaisa. So what about if someone forgets to set the clock, to turn off the lights, turn off the AC or the steam after davening? So if it's a hefsed mu'at, if it's a relatively small loss, in other words, you cannot be matur to tell the goy to turn it off. Furthermore, even if the goy voluntarily does it, you don't let him. You stop him. You tell him, hey. But if there's a relatively big hefsid, let's say if you finish davening 10 o'clock in the morning and mincha is only 8 o'clock at night, so from 10 to 8, it's going to be going the entire very hot Shabbos. So it's going to go full blast for an entire day, and it's going to be a significant bill. Let's say you're allowed to tell the goy to turn it off. Of course, b'derech remez shloi b'derech tzivoy is the preferred method. In the event that you can't, you could. But again, you have to ask a shayla. It's not so poshut.
Then don't we come back into the problem of it's possibly also a baina or seiser, because it's, in other words, because it's not just the turning it
most
on.
don't agree.
In other words, there's turning it on and turning it off, but there's also opening and closing of circuits.
But most don't agree with that. That's the main issue.
Also, where do you draw the line on significant? What's considered significant? From probably from shliach to shliach, depending on his fundraising success, that varies greatly. What's considered significant?
That's why they should. That's why what I'm strongly suggesting over here is that everyone should ask a particular shaila in their scenario, in their case. So again, like if an alarm goes on and it's disturbing people, so it's considered a tzayich gadol. You're allowed to tell the goy to stop it.
But it always has to be done with a remez?
If you can. But if it's tzayich gadol, you can tell him.
Oh.
The truth is, nowadays the air conditioning scenario is really not as common, because usually commercial air conditioning systems, even residential ones, it's not only that, it's you upgrade your, not even the air conditioning system. All you do is you upgrade the thermostat to one that has programming. You're talking about for the whole thermostat is another couple $100, and it programs it to turn on and off at certain times. It's really, but still, the concept is you have to know still, even though because it applies to other things.
Correct. What about opening or closing windows if it could affect the AC directly? Like the Alter Rebbe says, you're not supposed to open a door if you have a candle burning within close proximity of the door, because inevitably the wind, so it's like a direct thing, the wind will cause it to go out. So what about over here?
Is that the same question also in the refrigerator?
Even indirectly is a problem. Like if it's not mamish right by the door, there's still problems. If it's like by the wall, then from closing it, it'll shake and different things like this. I guess the question is how directly will it affect the? In other words, it's obviously going to affect the. If you just open the door and close the door, it's even that is affecting it to a minuscule amount. I guess the question is to what degree. Where's your thermostat? To what degree is it going to actually affect it? Is it mamish going to our refrigerator is the same problem?
Yeah.
So
that's why lichatchila, a refrigerator, ideally you should open when it's working.
Yeah, I've heard of people do that.
Others say that it's groma, it's not direct. By the way, shamaiti, that in the Rebbe's house, the refrigerator would not be open and closed on Shabbos. The milk used to go bad after Shabbos because it was left out. The kitzer. Because the refrigerator wasn't open and closed on Shabbos.
No, nobody thought to use a cooler with what's it called? Just a cooler with ice packs or something.
Or it wasn't so negea, or that taiva wasn't so negea.
It was sachakel. There was a milk that was there for coffee in the morning, and that's it, Mistama. So, yeah.
Tea. I don't know about coffee. So Al Kapanim, in general, poskim say that opening and closing the door, opening and closing the window for air to come in, or to close it to prevent air from coming in, even though it affects the AC, it's groma. It's indirect. It's indirect, and it's Eina Biskavin. You don't have in mind to do it. Being that it's Eina Biskavin, there's room to be lenient. If you have kavona to have an effect on the AC, either to turn it on or to turn it off, then there's a problem. Then you cannot be matir.
It's also, I think, comes back to what you were saying before about the about what degree of benefit are you getting from it. In other words, if it's Eina Biskavin and it's grama, and also in my house it's already cool, I don't have any reason to that the air conditioner should kick on. I'm not benefiting from anything from that. So does that play in also maybe a little bit?
Good. That plays in on what your kavanah is. That enables you to clarify what your real kavanah is. Yeah?
Yeah, makes sense.
Okay, then, there's no time to get into it. Like a Shabbos clock, if it's set to the wrong time, to delay it being turned on or delay it being turned off is more acceptable versus doing something to it that will cause it to turn on or turn off sooner.
Meaning you're talking with the ones with the pegs. If you're going to move the pegs to so it's different moving it later than moving it to an earlier time.
And even if it's on now, if you're delaying it, you can't. The peg that is going to turn it off has to remain inside first, and then you put the one that's going to delay it in, and then you pull it out. Otherwise, you basically just caused it to go.
Why is that scenario different than the scenario of adding oil to the lamp, where we say that you can only benefit from it up to the point where the original oil was, but not after that?
Because that you did a mamash, a direct ma'isa of havara.
No, it's already lit. You're adding oil to a lamp that's already lit. So why is that different than delaying your air conditioner for turning off for longer?
Because this is groma. This is your goydem. You're being goydem. And by the way, you also have to do it kalachiyad. But over here, it's a groma. You're doing it something indirect, and there's no direct action of what you're doing. Putting in oil where the lamp is burning, basically, if you leave it, that ma'isa, if you continue to leave it, it's going to burn up, cook up the oil. That's what you're doing on Shabbos. You're adding something to a pot that's cooking. Why is that acceptable?
And let's say the other way around. Let's say you remove oil from your delay.
So you're doing kiboy.
I'm not understanding the distinction between
That's a Mishnah.
That and moving the.
That's a Mishnah.
No, I understand. I'm not understanding the distinction in this case with the Shabbos clock of you're moving the thing. You're directly causing it to turn off later, to turn on later.
Because it's going anyway. It's going. All you're doing is delaying it. It's going anyway. So you didn't turn anything on. You just have a groma of preventing it from going off.
Fine, but in the case of a candle, it's burning already. You're just causing it to burn longer.
You're cooking it. You're burning oil on Shabbos. That's very direct. That's not a groma.
Well, in other words, in the case of the air conditioner, are we only considering the point where it turns on and turns off to be, or are we considering the use of electricity on a constant basis to be? That's
not the issue. That's not the issue. Causing the kiboy or havora. That's the issue. But even that has to be done kalachiyad. It's not so pashut, and only the tzorech. It's not recommended. That's only if it was set wrong or something happened. But the chatchila, you don't rely on that. You set it right before Shabbos, and you don't mess around with it. Because even then, you have to do it kalachiyad. It's not so pashut. All right. Hatzlocha Rabbo Muflaga. Have a wonderful.
Okay, thank you so much. Yasher Keach.
Thank you very much. Yasher Koach.
Hatzlocha Rabbo.